Well, let me take it from my own personal perspective, because my father was a worshipful master of the Freemasons, so I do not think he was some satanic beast that was, doing black rituals in the back room. My father, though, if you realize, being worshipful master of the Kaiserslautern Lodge of Berlin, then became the first ever nuclear sub technician with Jimmy Carter. My dad and Jimmy Carter were both on Killer One. Then my father progressed to chasing flying saucers for Project Blue Book. So now, once again, the covert brotherhoods, once you get up into these Illuminati, once you get up into the intelligence agencies and levels of knowledge, you must be initiated. So then my father moved on to building nuclear missiles, and I had to move to North Dakota so we could build nukes there for Martin Marietta, who happens to have a ride in Disney World, which is also sponsored by Masons. So I have somewhat of a grounded level of appearance or thoughts on Freemasonry, but at the same time, I know my father chased flying saucers for the government. So I have to have this open to me. I can't just ignore it. This is my dad. Others can just, set this type of information aside.
But this works in everyday life. And some of my listeners out there who could be skeptical of information like this. Now I'm skeptical. I'm the world's greatest cynic, maybe, in some ways. But, we're all initiated through our jobs, through our families, through the universities. Things that are passed down from our father and our mother, and they want us to believe a certain way. Certainly the ecclesiastical brick in the pyramid. We are initiated. We have to come up and we have to say the things the right way. We have to do things the right way. And we may not even know that this is a practical initiation. But you look at things like Skull and Bones or Delta Kappa Epsilon, which George Bush was initiated before he was in Skull and Bones. And all the things they make you do, the hazing, the different things that you go through, that most Americans go through, that people around the world go through. We look at Saddam Hussein and we find out he was a member of the Safari Club, which was a branch of Freemasonry, let's call it, and he was initiated on the way up. And once he had proven his skills to be an assassin and a killer, only then was he given the dictatorship of Iraq, or Babylon, as we can call it. I think a lot of people aren't even aware that Iraq was Babylon and how close of a connection we in the United States have to Babylon. These are just historical facts, Freeman, that we have to put out there and keep reminding people of, because this is how these people think. The elites, the New World Order, the globalists, give them any name you want. This is how they think. This is their world. And as you mentioned just a second ago, this is their religion. And they do not allow any dissent. And, of course, we're seeing that now built into all of the Department of Homeland Security policies and philosophies, that if you don't agree with the government, you are a terrorist. This has gone to a level that is absolutely absurd. And what we're trying to tell you people today is what could be behind all of this. What is the motivating factor? What is the religion? What is the playbook? And then again, what is the agenda? And when we're talking about how this merges into space and cloning and biotechnology and high technology, we are getting into a place where no group of humans has ever gone, at least according to my knowledge, ever. And that includes, the ancient history where we know they had some technologies. We have gone to a place, thanks to the supercomputer and thanks to raping and pillaging of resources so that they can have the money to do all of this, the massive combinations of things, Freeman, that have taken us to a place that I think is extremely threatening to all humanity.
I absolutely agree. And on FreemanTV.com, I have the Obama deception. But I coupled this with the further Obama deception by William Cooper, when he starts to express and explain how the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, and the Bilderberger groups are all tied up in this extraterrestrial mess. And that a lot of this has to do with their inability to deal with this extraterrestrial threat. And they are needing to come up with a plan, a way to survive, knowing that they are helpless against these beings.
And Bill Cooper, I believe, near the end of his career, where it was ended on his front lawn by the police shooting him, had gone back to say that, maybe he was being deceived. Maybe he was part of a giant psyop, and begin to kind of open up that whole chain, that whole can of worms that, again, gives us the perfect excuse to merge together as a one world order.
Absolutely. And that's what we're seeing here. And what we're watching is now the fulfillment of Albert Pike's prediction for World War III. And he had stated that first they would get the Israelis against the Muslims and start this war. And Obama is going to be pushing the Israeli borders to pre-67 borders. And I still think that he's going to take the Temple Mount, that Israel will take the Temple Mount on the 4th of July. That's my prediction.
This 4th of July?
Well, my predictions, I watch for ritual dates. So for 10/13, I was on your show 2 years before it happened. And we said 10/13 will be the day. And then 2 years later, that was the day that Paulson and Bernanke brought the CEOs in.
Economic 9/11, yeah.
Exactly. So it fell on 10/13, and it was reported 10/13 bigger than 9/11. And so I'm watching significant dates according to this Brotherhood's religion, because what we're looking at are Templars, which takes us to Solomon's temple, which is the son of Amun. And so we're back to this Egyptian cult again. You realize that this Temple of Solomon was built around to house this Ark of the Covenant, which is the first weapon of mass destruction, according to the Bible, given to mankind, because that's what they used it for. But you realize, as well, that on top of this is what they called the Shekinah, which was the feminine spirit of God that hovered around the Ark of the Covenant, which they needed to house in Solomon's temple. So now if you're a Freemason and they say to you, what is the Shekinah? A Freemason proper response would be, that's invisible cloud of brotherhood that surrounds the Masonic altar. So they understand this power of the Shekinah. And when you realize that when Saddam Hussein announced that he was Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated and began rebuilding Nebuchadnezzar's palace in Babylon, or Iraq, and putting himself up in statuary as Nebuchadnezzar in artwork and everything else, the masonry, he was not hiding the fact. We attacked with a campaign known as the Shock and Awe, which correlates with the Shekinah. And so we realized that Nebuchadnezzar was taken out by the shock and awe, and they used the mother of all bombs, which we know of as the Moab, who are the very people that took out Nebuchadnezzar. So realize that this is high-level ritual. And so when I'm looking at the picture and starting to put it all together, it's not so strange to me to see Akhenaten become our president. And if it were simply Obama that looked like Akhenaten, I would say, okay, we've got maybe a lineage thing here. We got some curious, just a coincidence. But it's the whole family. It's Michelle, it's Malia, it's Sasha. They all are identical to Akhenaten's family. And this family was so pivotal to the history of Earth, with establishing monotheistic religion, with bringing about the city-states that we're dealing with now, the Washington, D.C., the city of London, and Rome. It was and now it's all coupling together. We've got the Pope coming out that's saying aliens are okay. They don't suffer original sin. He's saying that the Templars are okay. They didn't really do anything bad back in 1307 when we burnt them all at the stake. We're wrong. We're sorry. And all of this story is all coming together. And when you see the correlation that they're all Nazis, the Bush family funded the Nazis, Arnold Schwarzenegger's family are Nazis, the Pope's a Nazi, and you start to correlate this with your Columbia sportswear logos, your Walt Disney, the whole Hannah Montana Jedi war going on with the mind pattern programming of the princess programming and the warrior programming, then you realize that our whole world is maintained and constrained within the reality of these manufacturers who are within a religion that goes far beyond what we think is reality, because they talk about Atlantis. America was known as New Atlantis. Our name, Columbia, comes from the stars. It comes from Sirius, and that's the star they all worship. The Egyptians all worship Sirius. The Mayans worship Sirius. They have calendars. Their New Year's is based on Sirius. Why? Why is this so? Why does the Pope wear a fish hat? These questions need to be asked.
Yeah, I think the generic excuse for this is, and as you know, the monotheistic religions began co-opting the savages and their little unique rituals. And again, ritual is the key word here, and you mentioned that a minute ago, and I think that shouldn't be taken lightly. The whole thing is a giant ritual, in my personal opinion, and I know you believe that as well. I mean, we look at that, and we could say, being the devil's advocate, well, they're just kind of copying things. They're just trying to write things in a language that the little people and the heathens will understand. I mean, when you're going to go co-opt the Egyptians and burn down their library in Alexandria, when you're going to co-opt the Druids and these people who have these long histories of mysticism and of ritual, then you've got to replicate that in order to entice them into your controlled religion. You've heard that. I mean, that is certainly one of the excuses, and this is why everything relates around, sun worship and sun religions, because obviously the primitive people in the world that knew that sun brought life thought of the sun as a god, and then we just go on and on and on from there. The thing is about all that, I could see that as a viable excuse, but excuse my expression, folks, it's 2009. This is the 21st century. I mean, even if that was true 100 years ago, up until 1,000 years ago, we are in an advanced state now. Do we still need all of this stuff? Why can't they start cutting back on it and I guess abbreviating it or bringing things into this new 21st century? Why are we still following the rituals that were being played here in this planet Earth, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago?
They're very good at their job.